one of the reasons why I really, really wanted to talk to you is because you're doing something that I think a lot of people want to do, and they all wonder how. How do I become a puppeteer? How do I do my own thing? And so many other people I feel are trying to be part of other things, bigger things, rather than really completely building a show and essentially a company from scratch. Welcome back to Puppeteers. I'm your host, Adam Krutinger, and I have my trusty sidekick, Cameron Garrity, with me.
Hey, everybody. Good to be here.
And today we are talking to the dashing Derek Lux. Hello, Derek. Welcome to the show.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me, guys.
Absolutely.
So, Mr. Derek, you have the best name for a puppet company in the world, I think. DLux Puppets. And it's your actual name, too, which is like the coolest thing ever.
It is my actual given name. That's right. So yeah, I mean, Derek.
The only problem I would have thought with that is that it may have been already taken just because of the name DLux Puppets. Oh my gosh, it's great. I love it.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. Well, when we figured it out, I think a lot of things like DLux.com, DLux Entertainment, or a lot of stuff. There's a lot of, and even the specific spelling here. I'll show you. Like I said, I've got to be
posers. They're not an actual.
Exactly.
Your name is Derek Lux, DLux. Oh my god.
Yeah, I'm in my office right now, whereas my shop has like a giant banner and all the stuff, but better connection in here. But yeah, the logo. So DLUX, because if you just abbreviate Derek DLux Puppets, but even that spelling. Like I said, DLux Entertainment, a lot of DJs and a lot of other people have kind of taken that, but DLuxPuppets.com and trademarked and all the copyright, that's all available. And so I was happy to get it. And the funny thing about my name is I make the joke, I'm so dense, I didn't even really realize until I was about 16 that my name could do that. My first job's In-N-Out Burger, which for California and West Coast people, that like In-N-Out, it's a big deal. We're proud of our In-N-Out Burger over here. Anyway, I was like 16, and my boss was this real loud, boisterous guy. And after a couple of weeks of work, and I showed up one day, and he's like, "Derek Lux, DLux," and I literally had that moment where I went, "Oh yeah, that's pretty cool, I guess." And then it's stuck ever since. That kind of tends to be my nickname in certain circles. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
I love it.
Yeah. So what are you working on now? You're always up to some really cool big projects all the time.
Yeah, big is right. Yeah, I'm one of those guys. It's like some people are able to churn out tons and tons of things, and I work on these projects which take sometimes a year or 2 years to accomplish. So yeah, I grabbed from my shop. Dun 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 dun. Peter. Oh, big glare. There we go. Peter Pan. We are. So, my company, DLux Puppets, it's a theatrical company. We debuted with Alice in Wonderland about a year and a half ago, and our follow-up is Peter Pan. So it's really great. It's my wife and I. So we both have a background in performing. So for Alice in Wonderland, she was an actress playing Alice as a human on stage. And in the opening of our adaptation, I kind of played the father. And then immediately I go off stage, do a quick change, and then the White Rabbit comes out as a puppet. And then when she goes into Wonderland, all those characters she encounters are puppets. So some hand puppet size, some 7 feet tall. Like when she shrinks down, the caterpillar is larger than her, like in the book or in the all the other adaptations. So I made a giant caterpillar on a mushroom that wheels out. So that's kind of the thing that we do. Everything's digitally projected behind us. So Peter Pan is our follow-up, and it's kind of the same thing where she's playing Wendy, and then Peter is a puppet, and she goes into Neverland. And all the characters in Neverland are puppets. Some, and actually they're all, I would say, actual size. So like Peter's kind of the size of a small child. Captain Hook is about 7 feet tall from his hat all the way down to his feet. And so with that show, it's a little interesting because we had to make a few tweaks and modifications because Alice in Wonderland was a 2-person show. Same with Peter Pan. So you're like, how do you do Peter Pan with only 2 people? But we were able to make some edits and kind of remove some minor characters. And with it being an adaptation, you can kind of take creative license and say, this is our incarnation of this story. And so we're doing it, and we debut in 2 months, which is a lot because we still have a lot to do.
Wow, that's so cool. So
Yeah,
so when you
Yeah.
perform these shows, you're in full view the whole time as a puppeteer, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So
How often do you try to obscure yourself, or do you ever? Because I saw like with your queen, you're kind of half in it with the lower half and things like that. So how do you make those decisions?
Yeah, great question. So kind of, taking from Avenue Q in a sense, which kind of was a big turning point, I feel like, in at least American theater with puppetry. Yeah, I'm in black, and I'm in full view. I wear long sleeve black and pants and shoes. So really it's just my face that people are seeing. And I'm on stage, like the best kind of example of it is like when I do the Mad Hatter. The Mad Hatter's with me at a tea table, and he's kind of sitting on my lap, and I'm sitting behind the tea table. So it looks like he's sitting, and he's more of a ventriloquist style in terms of where my arm enters. And then I do everything. But, when he's talking to Alice and, doing all its big voices, and, I'm doing the big facial expressions as well to, keep telling the story. So in the Queen of Hearts, I took from kind of other hybrid styles that I saw. I love going on Pinterest or going online and seeing other Facebook videos that puppet groups will share from other countries. And so my eyes really were opened up to all these different styles. And so for the Queen of Hearts, she is a hybrid style. From the waist up, she's a puppet, but she has kind of a big hips, and she's got a big rear end. And I step into her, and I have a harness that goes over my shoulders and straps on. And so from the waist down, it's me. It's my legs are under the dress, and she's got a full length gown, and it's all made from sequins, and it's sparkling. And it's gorgeous. But it's so when I'm dancing, it's my legs doing everything and such. And then her torso comes out in front of me, and my head goes in, and then she's a live hand. So I've got, my left hand in her hand. So, and we do, like I said, a couple different styles in that whole show. The Cheshire Cat is about the size of a hand puppet, but I wear a harness, a snare drum harness, and I have a pole extending, and I'm able to rotate the cat, almost 360 degrees. I can't go all the way around because the pole will stop my arm, but he rotates upside down, and then his head is on a swivel. So then I can actually turn his head for like the end of his song. And that kind of gets a big laugh from the kids because they can see he's got movement, but then it totally flips upside down, which is a fun moment. But I can't even recall if I saw that or just kind of came to it on my own. But so I try to mix it up a little bit and show, different styles. And it was out of necessity because I thought Cheshire Cat's kind of the magical character in the show. How can I, add a sense of flying or wonder or stuff? And so that kind of allowed him to float and do a lot of things in our show.
Yeah. Well, it must be difficult too when you have both with Wonderland and with Peter Pan, it's been adapted so many times. Obviously, there's the really iconic, Disney movies that are based on it. And with puppets, for as much as you can be otherworldly, you're still sort of strapped to the limitations of human physics and stuff like that. So for you to be able to find those examples and ways to change it up is really remarkable. And it seems like a real feat of engineering that you've got going there.
Yeah. And especially also to add in that you all do it yourself as well. It would be a challenge even if you had, a whole cast of people doing it, and a one-man puppet show with your wife as well. But wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, it is. And I mean, and I probably didn't mention, but I have a background in puppet building as well. So, I mean, I build all the puppets. So I design them, build them, and have to just scratch my head and go, how am I doing this one? And that's nice because I make them for myself. So I know I'm going to be the one handling this, and I can figure out and measure it to my size and torso and my comfort and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, Alice in Wonderland its running time is about 50 minutes. And it's like being shot out of a cannon because we have 7 puppets and then with playing Alice's father, I play, 8 characters in the show. And it's, I mean, immediately as soon as we start the show, I'm just running, and it's nothing but quick changes, and we don't have anyone backstage either. We perform in theaters. We go into medium to large size houses, 400, 500 seat theaters, up to maybe 1,000 now. And even though we have a full tech crew in the booth, backstage, we just kind of say, oh, we've got it. Because we rehearsed it where everything's preset and I'm running. I drop this puppet, then go over here. I step into the queen, lift her up and put the harness on. And, and we gave ourselves all the time in between the scenes. We thought it out and kind of even timed quick changes and said, okay, we need 45 seconds to make sure I've got time to get into this one and such. So thanks for saying that. Because, yeah, I mean, we just felt there was maybe a limitation. We're like, let's just make sure we don't have anyone helping us, because sometimes we might, sometimes we might not. Let's just be able to do this on our own. And it's been a fun challenge to do. And, knock on wood, we've been able to do the show without ever having any puppet malfunctions, if you will.
Yeah, well, and like you said, in being able to write the script in a way, if you realize you need 45 seconds instead of 40 seconds, you maybe add an extra line, or have your wife, just kind of stretch a little bit, so you know that you have time to get into the queen, or Tweedledee and Tweedledum, or what have you. That's really cool. And so nice. With the projections and animation behind you, is that stuff that you guys do as well?
No, in fact, I have no background in that. And all of that, yeah. So all of that is done by Steve Axtell of Axtell Expressions.
Get out, really?
Yeah, okay.
That's great. Yeah, we're gonna have him on soon.
Steve and I were talking about things. So yeah, I do know that he is a upcoming guest, and it's scheduling and such. Yeah, I know. It's great. So I remember we had the idea for Alice in Wonderland in the early stages, and the only thing we couldn't figure out is, if we make this a traditional play with background scenery or flats, how do we do those special effects? How do we have her fall down a rabbit hole, shrink, grow, those other things? And I subscribed to Steve Axtell's YouTube channel. And he has a conference he does every year called CAX, which is his company in collaboration with Cadabra, which is a magician and variety artists association. And he uses it as a platform to also launch new products, because in addition to having a huge catalog of puppets, Steve Axtell also has all these patents on all these other types of products and services he offers for variety performers, and he has animatronics. He works with like Universal Studios Asia companies. I mean, it's a big company, and he launched this new product called a live virtual set, which is projections, but it's an integrated system that allows the performer to have control over it and integrate a lot of digital effects and practical effects. Like, there's a moment in our show where Alice will reach up, so she falls, down the rabbit hole, which is this gorgeous animated sequence, and she just, stands in front and kind of does this, and it really does look like she's falling. But when she's in that room with doors and she, drinks the potion and shrinks and grow, there's a big key on the wall. And it was Steve's idea. Said, okay, what if we see a digital key hanging on a nail, and she reaches up and it's timed where it disappears, and she turns around and she reveals a practical key in her hand. And so we did that. We did a few tests with the sizing to make sure that a key we purchased matched everything. And it was just super cool, because every night we do the show, she's got it, kind of palmed in her hand. People try to figure out how it is, but it's very simple, And when she holds her hand, blocking it, and it's timed, and it disappears, and she turns around and reveals it, and it actually gets kind of gasps from kids and from families. And we've had parents come to us and say, okay, I've seen your show once or twice locally now, and I think I got it figured out. There's a slit in the screen. Yeah. She reaches through, grabs. We're like, no, it's not that. No,
they start trying to figure it out. Yeah. And it's not that simple.
Oh, and because he works with a lot of magicians and stuff, he's able to add value to our shows. He's been an amazing collaborator, to really amp up what we're doing. So sorry, that was a long answer, but yeah, it's honestly, we wouldn't be able to do these shows on this kind of multimedia level and this kind of big budget type of look without Steve Axtell. He's been just a phenomenal collaborator.
Yeah, and it also allows you to have less people as well. Normally, you'd have to have a whole separate crew running lights and hitting next on the cues and whatnot. So that's pretty handy.
Yeah, it's been cool. And as Peter Pan's going to be a bigger production. We're still doing everything with him, but as we do stuff, we're getting like a formal lighting designer. We're growing to have a little bit more of a bigger team, just because that's the direction we want to go in. Mm-hmm. But you're right. It's like if you wanted to start at where we did, we were good to go. Just the two of us once everything was created. Yeah.
What for the projections? Do you have a short throw projector in the front, or is it in the back?
Yeah, it's rear projected. Yeah, and it's a short throw, and we've got a short throw lens on it, and
those are expensive.
our show and shows, they're pricey. They're definitely pricey. I mean, in a way, it's, we may not be as big budget as some, big consecutive touring shows, but we're not, a traditional, puppet show in that sense. Alice in Wonderland was pricey. Peter Pan's even more expensive. But this is our company, and with the direction we're taking it, and we want to really try to push the envelope and challenge ourselves. But yeah, that projector, and we're actually, for Peter Pan, we're using 3 projectors and 3 short throw lenses. It's gonna be a big show.
Well, we'd love to kind of go back to the early days of Mr. DLux before DLux.
Yeah.
What kind of kid were you? What kind of what drove you back then when you were just getting started?
Oh man, so what kind of kid was I? I think I was a weird kid, probably.
You didn't need to tell us that. Those are the only kind of people we interview. So.
I was gonna say,
if you're a puppeteer, you were a weird kid growing up.
Yeah, right. Like I was the high school quarterback, and I was like, no.
And then I got into puppets.
Exactly. I was like, yes. Exactly. Not at all. It's so funny. So I have 3 older brothers, and I think I was the weird little brother. I used to talk to myself at the dinner table. I'd turn around and I would make like shadows on the wall and talk to myself. And I think they would just be like, and there were a few of them were surfers. So they'd be like, bro, what are you doing, bro? Weird. Just and I'm like, I'm making characters. And, that was a little bit of, who I was, I think. And just the kid, a little bit outside the box. But in terms of puppetry and how I came to it, I know that it's funny. I was thinking, kind of prepping for this, thinking like, okay, when was the first, puppetry exposure, I guess you could say I had. And obviously Jim Henson and the Muppets. How could I not? But the one I think that really struck true to me was a ventriloquist named Ron Lucas. So Ron Lucas has a few characters like Buffalo Bill, and he had a special on TV like in the late 80s. I think it's called like Who's in Charge or Who's in Charge Here or something. And anyway, it was, it was a live show. It was a really, a big special that he did. And at one point, he like took his shoe off and put a sock on and put a rubber band and kind of showed like, hey kids, like here's how you can do it. And he's a amazing ventriloquist technically, and how talented he is and what he can do. But I remember thinking like, oh, put a sock on your hand, and like, oh, that's kind of cool. So that was the first time I thought of like, oh, puppets could be something accessible that I could just figure out on my own. And then, at that time too, with Jim Henson, and I think I was old enough, I think, to remember watching the Jim Henson Hour in its, short-lived glory. And then, my favorite movie growing up was Pinocchio, which was one thing, but the second was The Great Muppet Caper. Everyone's got their own, but for whatever reason, that one seems to be my favorite Muppet movie of the original 3, I'd say. And then when Jim Henson passed, my parents knew how much. See, I don't remember as much. I was 7 when he passed away. So I don't remember how much, I was involved with puppets. I just was living my life. But yeah, my dad told me a while ago that my mother and father actually had to have a conversation to say, how do we approach Derek? Because this might kind of hit him hard when he understands what this might mean. And I remember watching the episode with Sean and Patrick Johnson of Swazzle. and how they're a few years older than I am, but they were like junior high, and how like, yeah, they were depressed and what it meant. And I don't think I took it with as much, what's the word? Gravity? Well, I don't know, but it didn't, I don't think it was quite as profound.
It didn't affect
because,
you quite as much. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I was young, but I do remember watching, and I remember like counting the days to the special, that they did afterwards, when he passed, and with, Steve Whitmire, and Kermit comes out at the end, and like, and I remember just being like, what's it going to be now? So that, like, I feel like those two experiences in my early years, 5, 6, 7, when we all probably can think back to some of our earliest memories, that was kind of it for me. But when I was about 10 or 11, my mother took me to a puppet show at the library, and took me to, it was a marionette show. And I just remember having my eyes open and thought, oh my gosh, yeah, I've been a fan of the Muppets and of Ron Lucas, but this was actually the first time I ever saw a puppet live in front of me. And it's just like a light bulb went off. So we spoke to the Puppeteer afterwards, which was was so generous. And we were able to find out that there was a local, guild, the San Francisco Bay Area Puppeteers Guild. And we went to a meeting, and for a few years, I was going to meetings and taking stuff. I met Mike Osnowich, who's Frank Oz's father. But I remember I was about 10 or 11, and it was a holiday party, I think was the first meeting we went to. And it was at Mike Osnowich's house in Oakland, California, which is where Frank grew up. And I remember going down the halls, and he's proud father. He had all of Frank's directorial movies on his wall, like Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. He had Little Shop of Horrors, and I was just like, oh. And I said, Mr. Osnowich, I would, really like, and I asked if I could have Frank's autograph. So he's like, come here. He took me to his Rolodex, and then wrote down like his office in New York, gave it to my mother, took a picture. So then my mother mailed a picture of me and his father, to Frank's office, and said, could we please have a picture of you and Jim Henson, and you sign it and stuff. And he was very much like, give this to Frank, send Frank this picture, make sure he sent, because, it's like, Frank, give this little boy an autograph. Like, here it is, proof that you met me. And so got that. And I actually met Sean and Patrick at that time too, when I was part of the guild, which was really awesome. And we just kind of knew each other briefly. I was a kid, they were teenagers, and saw what they were doing. And so I was only really involved in building puppets at that time. I just found it fascinating. I was the kid that took apart electronics and whatnot, because I was fascinated with how things were built. And then it was only for a few years. Then I kind of moved on to theater and whatnot. And then, the journey continued years and years later. But those were just kind of the childhood, like getting my feet wet. And then I kind of, like I said, just kind of shelved it for a while and moved on to other things until I came back to it as an adult. So that was a little long-winded. I just realized. Sorry.
No.
Yeah, but what made you come back to it as an adult?
That's what I was wondering too. Yeah.
That's like the most important piece of it.
That's true. Like, no one cares when you're 6, Derek. Talk about it as an adult.
You just ate all the sides. You left out the main course.
It's true. So, in high school, I got into theater a lot. And then out of high school, my plan was to go to Broadway. So I learned to sing, dance, act, wanted to do that. I started doing shows professionally, got in some other a big high profile show in San Francisco. And then I kind of got a little disenchanted with theater. So I got more interested in film and TV. Started taking method acting classes and deep stuff, because I wanted to do, work like, Sean Penn was doing, or this and that. And so then shortly after getting married, my wife and I moved to Los Angeles right around 2008, when the recession hit and there were some entertainment strikes too pending or recovering from the writer strike. So it was really, even though I was in the unions and had a little bit of a resume from San Francisco doing some things, it was hard to get started in LA. So I had a lot of downtime and nothing to do creatively. And for whatever reason, I just thought, I don't know what this is, but I'm just curious in puppet building again. And I hadn't touched it in years. And when I was a kid, the internet wasn't around. But now I was like, let me go on Google and see, puppet building. And there was a plethora of information. And it took me to a few blogs and sites. And then the first thing I ever did was I found projectpuppet.com and, downloaded the glorified sock pattern. And we were so broke at the time. I mean, like, it was, it's like $20. It's so affordable, but $20 was kind of a lot in those like starving early days of LA. And I convinced my wife, I think, bought it for me for my birthday. And I went to Joann Fabrics and got like, $20, $30 worth of like a needle and some felt and some things, for like the mouth and just some other things to get it going. And I made my first puppet. It was crude and it was, just real whatever. And I was probably about 26 or something. And then I made it and I was like, I kind of want to build another one and another one and another one. And then I was going out on auditions as an actor and saw one thing that needed somebody who could maybe do some puppets. And I thought, oh, okay, well, maybe I'll take one of these puppets to the audition and show them. And did a little thing. And then from that, those same people wanted me to make just a few puppets for a music video. So they gave me money just to cover supplies. And I thought, oh, okay, this is kind of cool. They gave me, like $200 or something just to be able to buy a few things. And it was great. I made like a goat and I like carved from foam, like the horns and did things. And I thought, oh, this is kind of cool. And they turned out decently well. And I made a piece of bacon in a frying pan and made like a little mechanized mouth where it flipped open with a string. And I mean, it was with, coat hangers and rubber bands. It was super crude, but it worked for the shots. And again, I like, these were the first puppets I ever built freeform. So I kind of was, feeling proud of myself. And I made a couple puppets for my niece and nephew at the time for Christmas presents. And then the real turning point was I just felt so inspired by this. And I had such kind of guilt about it with my wife because I'm like, I don't know, this feels weird. I'm an actor, babe, but I just really kind of want to explore this puppet thing. And do you think that's okay? Do you think I'm being unfocused? And she's like, go for it. Clearly you want to explore this, so go for it. And I said, I grew up with these guys in San Francisco. They've got this big shop now called Swazzle, and they just built puppets for Pee Wee Herman on Broadway. It was like right around that time. And I just messaged them on Facebook and said, hey, I don't know if you guys ever need a hand building anything or whatever, but I'd love to help out. Well, I got a reply right away because Sean, I think, had just had a baby, and he was a new parent, so he was kind of out of commission for a little bit, just on the home front. So I went in, met Patrick, took the puppets I had from the music video, showed them, and they said, "Sure, why don't you help us with this show we're building right now?" It was one of their library shows. It was called, I think, Dream Carver. This is bilingual, really cool story. That was a real foundation for me. I was able to figure out, I would say maybe about a good chunk of what I've learned in all my years thus far from them. And that was a real big jumping off point. And then from that point, as the story continues, it all happened in like a very short amount of time, a lot of these things. I was then going back to a Joann Fabrics and looking at fur, and I saw a really tall man, and I had met him in passing. It was Michael Earl, the late Michael Earl, who was a former puppeteer with Jim Henson in the early days on Sesame Street and some of the Muppet films. He had started a business in the valley where I was living of Los Angeles called Puppet School. And he and I actually crossed paths once just by a weird chance encounter, and he probably didn't remember me. And then we were both standing looking at this fur, and I look over and I said, hey, are you Michael Earl? I think we might have met. And I just said, I just finished kind of helping build some puppets at Swazzle. And he's like, oh, really? Well, hey, we want to come in and talk with me and my business partner, and let's talk about things. And that led to me creating the curriculum for Puppet School for their professional building classes at the time that they were trying to launch. And it's kind of funny because I was only really a few steps ahead of the people I was teaching, but it was enough to kind of say, okay, I can share. And I had taught other disciplines in my life through like martial arts and things. So I thought, okay, well, I know how to talk to people. I know how to kind of guide people through things and be encouraging. So we can do this. And so for a few months I worked there, and that was kind of something that got me a little bit more notoriety. And then all these other cool chance opportunities just started falling in my lap.
It's really interesting to me, especially to hear that you spent some time like with the method acting and things like that. The idea that putting on the puppet and really kind of being able to inhabit the rules of that size and that scale, and kind of letting the puppet help dictate what the character is going to be, in the same way of waking up and becoming the character that you wanted to perform. I could see the sort of jumping off point there, but yeah, to be able to random encounters, but to be able to just know, oh, that's Michael Earl or whatever. Yeah, it reminds me of, there is I guess David Rudman apparently was the first person to ever recognize Richard Hunt at a party.
Oh,
He's like, you know who I am?
Yeah.
Right,
Richard Hunt was
because-
just so excited to be recognized. You know, in the days before, you know, everyone knew every puppeteer. So I could see that moment of recognition being pretty great. And now to see you guys writing curriculum for your deluxe shows, that's really incredible.
Thanks.
So how long did you get to work with Michael? Were you working with him pretty much until he passed?
I worked with him for a better part of a year. This was
Okay.
probably the beginning of the year, and I think by the end of the year, we stopped. So, and part of the arrangement was at that time, as he said, also, hey, you know, if you want, I can train you as a puppeteer for film and TV technique, because I kind of like all of our teachers to have kind of gone through our curriculum. So I'll give you the equivalent in privates. So I had a handful of private lessons from Michael doing, you know, monitor work, which was just super invaluable. You know, I was just like, to get it from, you know, a source of great accreditation, you know, someone that's just so great in that. And that was great. And, you know, of course it takes so much practice, and, you know, I work more in theater than I do in that style. So I'm always kind of like dusting off the cobwebs anytime I'm, you know, like doing stuff a little bit, but I pick it up and kind of get it going again soon. But yeah, he took me through things. And we taught a few cycles of puppet building, you know, professional puppet building. There was like a beginning, intermediate, advanced, and it went through and repeated. But they found that those classes, honestly, were not as popular as the performing ones. And I think it's just how it goes. And also, we all kind of had the realization that you might be able to teach some of the basics of, you know, puppeteering in a 6-week course, but it's hard to teach an entire skill set of puppet building in a 6-week course. Like that's something that takes years. It's an apprenticeship. It's a thing, you know, like you can't really just get it all. I was able to just throw out things and try to get them, but it became really evident. It's like,
Yeah, there's so many different trades involved in, from costuming to mold making, this and that. That's why I think having a theater background helps a lot, because it's the same way in theater if you're building props and things like that. So the people have a natural advantage, I think, if they get into puppetry.
Yeah, exactly. And you guys know, and so many puppeteers admit, a lot of puppeteers come to it from other disciplines, you know, whether it's performing or stuff. And I saw a lot of people who were, you know, not to put down LA, I lived there for many years, it was my home, but, you know, a lot of film people, their background might be different than, say, theater people. So them coming into it, they may not have the same skill set as theater people. So they may not have just gone through all these different types of other disciplines, like we were saying, you know. Yeah. And so it was, maybe a little bit more challenging for some of those students to kind of grasp some of this stuff.
Yeah. So one of the things I think people will be really fascinated with you about is and one of the reasons why I really, really wanted to talk to you is because you're doing something that I think a lot of people want to do, and they all wonder how. How do I become a puppeteer? How do I do my own thing? And, you know, so many other people I feel are trying to be part of other things, bigger things, rather than, you know, really completely building a show and essentially, you know, a company from scratch. So are you able to, do you have to support yourself in any other way to do this?
I did while I was building the first show, Alice in Wonderland. But first off, thanks, Adam.
Were you still in an upper?
No. I hung up my paper hat years ago. My dad always jokes, because it's like they had all these different levels, like different, you know, you're a level 4, you can then operate the grill, or, you know. And I'd say In-N-Out Burger pays their employees really well. Like, I mean, the joke is like, well, I mean, like
they're not a sponsor of this episode.
But if they want to be, they can.
But if they want to be, yeah.
.com.
Quality you can taste. I think that's their slogan. No, I was performing. So after LA, I moved back to the San Francisco area when we had our children. We have twin boys. And And I got recast in a long-running show, the same show that Leslie Carrera Rudolph was in at one point, called Beach Blanket Babylon. It's San Francisco's most iconic stage show. It's the longest-running musical revue in history. I think now it's been running 44 years without ever closing down. Wow. And 7 or 8 shows a week that entire time. Because, like I said, I started wanting to do musicals, I had that skill set. So when I moved back, I just kind of put it out there to them and then got cast again. And I did the show for 4 years, which is a long run of a show. So Adam, here was the process, is that I was doing a, theater schedule, Broadway or touring schedule, where I'm doing weeknights and weekends, a lot of shows. During the day, I was, my wife's a school teacher, so she was teaching. I was with my kids in the morning, changing diapers. And in between, naps and everything else, I was then creating the show. I'd then go out to the shop and build a puppet or talk to Steve Axtell and build things. So there was a lot of moonlighting and a lack of sleep, very little sleep. For, I think all told, it took me 2.5 years to get Alice in Wonderland up on its feet. Great. Which is a long time to build a puppet show, perhaps. And I think coming from the acting world, where rejection, perseverance are huge themes, I think I just knew that, I've got to see this thing through. And being a parent, I had the extra motivation of wanting to have a different lifestyle so I could be there for my kids. Because right now, at that time, I was missing them. I mean, I don't see my family on the weekends during that time. And it wasn't conducive. It was great. And I loved performing in that show. But, long term, it wasn't going to work for the family. So I had to work even harder and see them even less to kind of get over that. And, and I had to we were all in, the joke we were making, and that, we debuted it in kind of our community in our hometown, in a sense. And we didn't know what it was going to be. The joke my wife and I made, like, if this thing is the most epic failure, then we have just got to move, because it's just like, we are all in, and we are promoting and funding and But it,
big risk.
Grateful.
Yeah,
it really was. But that's how, we've lived our lives. That's how we've always done. I mean, we moved to LA with no connections, no jobs, very little savings, and then we figured it out. And I was fortunate to be able to go on these really cool auditions. The career didn't pan out like I thought, but we found our way there to make it work. So we knew as a couple. So much of my success is having that support system. I can't lie. My wife is incredible. She's, always told me, like, yes, go for it. I believe in you. I think you're, this is what you're meant to do. But I'm getting off track, but back to it. Yeah, it was very hard, and I was supporting myself with that theater show while we were doing this. Then we debuted, and it only took about a year after its debut for me to secure enough contracts at theaters across the state and across the country to then leave the theater job, or the theater gig that I've been doing. And as of July of this year, I'm now full-time with the company, with my own company.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Thanks, man. Thanks. I say it like, because it's been a,
congratulations.
Congratulations. More like, I need a vacation. Like that. It's been a lot of work, but no, I can't be anything but just grateful and humble, because, I've worked a lot. I've worked really hard to get to this point. So the thing is, the one thing I've heard a lot of people say, Adam, because you're saying a lot of puppeteers would probably want to know, how did you do that, or what's the deal? I've posted pictures of puppets I've built and things, and I use different techniques, some flat patterning techniques. Sometimes it's overly elaborate. Sometimes it's simple and carving. And when I've done more of the overly elaborate stuff, people are like, oh my gosh, I could never do that. I don't have the patience to ever build a puppet in that way. And to that I go, okay, but you have to have that level of patience to have the outcome. You just do, if you want a quick turnaround, it's like anything else. You get out of it what you put into it. So if you don't have that patience and can't have a little bit longer term vision, you're not going to get those rewards. I mean, that's just the truth. And so much of what I read and what I get my head wrapped around these days are, personal development and success, books, I'd say self-help books, but, anything of that methodology or that thought process of, how did these entrepreneurs and tech companies and how do they do it? And, all these big people, what was their story? And those are the type of things that fascinate me. So that's always what I'm kind of holding my standard to. So, if someone built a company, it took them 5 or 10 years, and this show only took a couple of years, I'm like, hey, I'm still working faster than that. But I think it's because I'm comparing myself to maybe that model.
Yeah. And you have to want it bad enough too. Because like you said, it's like a lot of people say, oh, I want to have my own show or I want to do this. It's like, sure, everyone wants it, but you have to be able to give some things up. Like you said yourself, giving up your weekends with your family, that's a big thing to do, but it's what you have to make sometimes those kinds of choices. And if you can't make those kind of choices, you can't always rely on other people as well. Like, again, looking at your show, like you wrote it, you built the puppets for it, you perform it, if you had to lean on somebody else, would it have happened? It's not to say that you shouldn't ever collaborate with people either, but it's about, do you really want to do it?
Exactly. Yeah.
Do it then just do it.
Exactly.
But what if I fail? You know what? Then you'll learn exactly how not to do it, so that the next time you do it, you'll do it better.
Yeah, exactly. And that's just it. And I think it's because, again, I got rejected so much in acting. I was up for so many cool things in Hollywood that did not pan out. They never panned out like I wanted to. So I just took that and so I just toughened me up. And so, I just knew in my gut with Alice in Wonderland and with everything, I was like, I think all of my story thus far was to get me to this point. And I just felt in my gut, I was like, okay, I think I now know how to combine all this. Cause I sang, I also, had, you're right, the method acting background. And then, and I dabbled in all sorts of things, a little bit of voiceover, a little bit. And then the whole puppet, what is this puppet thing doing in my life? This doesn't even make sense. And if I just got out of my own way and meshed it all together, it became really unique and it carved out a niche. And while, the types of things we're doing are not entirely original, we just have carved out our own niche and we've got our own flavor and spin on things, which I think is unique enough that people are responding positively to it. And so I was just fortunate enough to that. But I think, like you're saying, Adam, people just, you got to want it bad enough.
Yeah. So many people are just waiting. They're waiting for the moment, for this and that. You know what? It's one thing that I've learned, and that's why, again, that's why I wanted to talk to you, and why I think people can get a lot of value by listening to this with you. And not only with you, people like David Stevens, people who are making their own opportunities. You can't sit there and wait. And here's the thing, too. If you make your own opportunities, people see that, and then they're like, hey, you know what? This guy hustles. Let's bring him in, too. It'll just create more other opportunities for you. You got to hustle.
Exactly. And that's what,
there's no secret sauce.
Exactly. And that's what Sean and Patrick
maybe at In-N-Out there's secret sauce though. That's the last In-N-Out joke. Last one.
No, I'm probably not the last, but but yeah, there's exactly, that's what Sean and Patrick were saying. It's like in LA, it's all film and TV really. And so they were saying, they're like, I don't know if we've ever gotten a job from an audition, or you can't sit and wait for the phone to ring. They were doing their library shows for the longest time in between the big contracts. And I mean, like they said, with Kidding, that just came to them because because people see what you're doing. And so my wife and I, we have so many crazy big aspirations with this company, but we know that as long as we're churning out our shows, we've got this one, our second, we've got our other third one figured out now. And, we kind of have it figured out. As long as we're putting that out there, then we feel when it's meant to be, those other bigger opportunities will come along because we started it. We put it out there first. That's what you got to do.
So as you're working on, you're obviously getting pretty close to getting Peter Pan up and running. If for as much as it's a bigger show and it sounds like there's a lot more puppets in a larger scale, it's probably so much easier because you have Alice in Wonderland under your belt. Is that kind of right?
Yes, I said yes, and then also not as much as I'd hoped. I remember when Alice in Wonderland was all done, I was talking to my wife. I was like, okay, when we do show number 2, whatever it is, it can't be like this again. It's got to be easier. We've got to take what we've learned, make it an easier process. And then it wasn't. It was just,
it's the same thing for things that I do. It's like, we just love the pain, don't we? Why did I do that?
It's so true. Exactly. I mean, I wrote the script for Peter Pan a year ago, and it was done. And so much of what we do right now required on like the funding of it. And the funding took a very long time, and it kind of took some twists and turns, which is fine. But it shortened our pre-production timeline from what I was hoping would be 6 or 9 months to like 3 months. So it's, right now, I'm not seeing my kids a whole lot right now. But again, it's one of those, I'm on the other side of it. We'll have
you're building
twice.
Something to
Yeah. So, but Cam, in other ways, I learned a lot with Alice in Wonderland. I made some puppets overly complicated internally. It took me forever to make this puppet, but the other puppet that I actually slapped together in a week is the one that everyone talks about and everyone wants to see after the show and the backstage tour. I'm like, so clearly I got to make them like that more often,
But this little thing took me, so much time.
Exactly. I was like, do you guys realize like how elaborate I made the Mad Hatter's pattern? But yet it was the caterpillar. I threw that together in less than a week because it was all carved and just fabricated and thrown together. But that's the thing that everyone gets the oohs and the ahs over. And I'm like, okay, that's a lesson to learn.
So.
That was your plan the whole time.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh man. But yeah, so what we're saying right now is show number 3. Show number 3 is going to be the easy one. That's the one we're going to figure out how to make it happen less painful,
Mm-hmm. Now, are there any things that you're able to recycle from Alice in Wonderland? I know just something simple that we were talking about before. Like, it seems like you have a lot of drum harnesses in Alice in Wonderland. Are those things that you recycle to bring down production costs, or is there anything like that to make things easier for yourself?
Sure. No, if only because everything is bolted to the drum harnesses. I could make some quick release type of things. But because I dance around and jump around a lot, then I'd be worried if it comes off or it malfunctions. Then I've got like Tweedledee and Tweedledum are pretty heavy. So if they came off the harness and I had to support them with my shoulders, I'd be in trouble. So right now, everything has its own designated harness. I'm going to use at least 3 of those harnesses for Peter Pan, all bought new, all dedicated just for those. And like Peter Pan, for instance, is actually going to be made off of a Steadicam harness because I want to be able to support the weight, but also have more flexibility to extend and drop. And it's all, the arm is, spring loaded so I can do more things. So that's going to be a little different. And, honestly, those aren't the most expensive elements of our show. If I were to contract my services and have another puppet builder make these puppets, that would just put the show just way up there. Right. Yeah. The biggest service is, using Steve Axtell, who is worth every dime that we spend. Absolutely. Because it elevates our show. But yeah, the way I'm able to do these so affordably is because I have my skill set of being able to make these and then also perform them on stage,
Well, and I just use the drum harness as an example. I just wasn't sure.
Sure.
We know a lot of people who are curious about how to make things, and the idea of nothing being too precious. I wasn't sure if anything ever had to be kind of taken from Alice to pay Peter, so to speak. So
that's actually funny because what's the expression like?
Robbing Peter to pay Paul or something.
Yeah. Just kind of funny because we were at least one name right. Yeah. There's one or two. Like I think we used a little bit of artwork. I think there was like one forest scene, so a little bit of Wonderland is slightly adapted to be Neverland. But we were able to just do. I mean, there's still some stuff on top of it, but like the foundation we were able to change. I do have a lot of other supplies sitting around. There's a ton of extra fleece and foam and things like that are still in good condition where I know, okay, I'll use these. So yeah, there was a lot of supplies that I could use, but yeah, like you were saying, not too precious. I'm kind of, always at the Alice puppets have already, some of them have taken a beating and I've repaired them several times and stuff, but yeah, I know one day I'll have to rebuild them and whatnot. I think, yeah, just as a general theme, even though you have hours and hours of work put into a puppet, I love hearing that story of how in the early days, with Jim Henson and the core puppeteers, they do a take and then they just throw it in a cardboard box and be like, and of course the character as it lives, in its spirit, sure, that's precious, but the physical puppet, that's okay. That's just the representation of it. That doesn't need to be too precious. Yeah.
A lot of times, though, those people throwing it weren't the people that built it as well. So.
that is true. Yeah, and that's the thing. Yeah, and that's why I'm grateful I built for myself, because I know after I'm done, I'm like, okay, place it in the box this way.
So where do you keep these big puppets? Because I know we wrote a big show like that too, with big harness puppets, Wizard of Claus, and I've got like an 8-foot snowman in my back room hanging from the ceiling, an 8-foot reindeer and stuff. So where do you keep, especially I can only imagine the real estate out there, having a storage space or something. Do you keep it on site in your garage, or where is it?
Yeah. So for the longest time, it was, I want to say, what did we do? We had half of it in our house. We had half in like our office, like stacked up, some of it. And then I think the other half was in the garage. But now we have these big road cases that we had custom built for them. They're these big wardrobe style, that, they're huge and they're heavy and stuff. So everything's, kind of stand up and placed. So we just like open the cabinets and take everything out. And we actually now have a trailer, like a big enclosed trailer. So when we tour anywhere in the state, California's big, but you kind of can get to almost anywhere in one day of driving. So any California engagement, we take our trailer. It's about, like 12, 14 foot long trailer or something. And so we wheel them up and everything. And so all of that is on our property, locked up, secured, all that stuff, and got insurance and all this stuff I need to make sure everything's taken care of, but yeah, they were taking over the workshop for a long time. So like a huge corner was just all of this stuff, but now I've got some more space. But and I had to go back and revise the Alice puppets. We had such a short timeline to get the show up and built that I knew I had to make them to be dismantled, but I couldn't figure it out in the time. I just didn't have the time. I was like, let me just sort that out later. So I've since gone back and hacked up certain things and know magnets and, bolts and things and how to do it. So they all now really break apart pretty compact. And so the whole show fits into some cases and travels a little smaller than one might think.
No, that's great. Yeah, to be able to, and Adam's showing this with like hooping and stuff on his building things. For a big character like this to just drop down into nothing is always beneficial. So
yeah,
that's cool that you built that in now.
Oh yeah.
With your musical background, do you guys write songs into your shows as well, or is that something you keep sort of separate?
So what we do with our shows, we actually parody shows, songs. So we'll take a well-known song and rewrite the lyrics to it.
Oh, cool.
Like a contemporary song?
Yeah. We usually go up to about the 1980s. So we try to choose more like classic standards. So for instance, in Alice in Wonderland, the first song in the show, when she falls down the rabbit hole, she kind of goes in, she's like, Mr. Rabbit, where did he go? Wow! And then you hear these pre-recorded backups. Immediately it's like, down, falling down, she's falling down. And it's, I Get Around from the Beach Boys. Mm-hmm. And so she's like, I'm falling down, where is the ground? Down a rabbit hole. And it's shaking, rattle and roll. And she's got this whole thing. I rewrote all those lyrics. And the cool thing is, with Weird Al Yankovic and a few other people, there are parody laws that we adhere to and that allow you to be able to take someone else's work, change it enough, and it then becomes, even while it's derivative, it still is, your own now, thing. And so all of our songs in the shows are that, like, we do Beach Boys, we've got Queen, we've got Tom Jones, we've got just a lot of other different types of things. I have kind of an eclectic taste. I didn't want to choose things that were too reasonable. I didn't want to choose, like Lady Gaga or anything that's, now, because that's one of those things that I knew like in 5 years we might date ourselves, a little bit. But if we chose stuff that's decades old, then it becomes a golden standard,
Well, and that's something for the parents too, to maybe enjoy a little bit as well.
Exactly, because the kids don't know these songs, but yeah, like when that comes on, the parents crack up because they're like, "Oh, Beach Boys, I get it," and we even have like Jefferson Airplane's "White Rabbit," which is like the Alice in Wonderland song, and that is Alice's final song where she addresses the audience at the end of the show. So and I always get like the grandfathers always come up to me and are like, "Good song choice, kid," and Peter Pan's no exception. We have more songs and tons of stuff, and even bigger, more eclectic selection. We've got the Beatles, a Beatles song. We've got Bon Jovi. We've got Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons. We've got, just goes on and on. All these types of standards that, again, parents will get a kick out of. But I rewrite all those lyrics. I just sit down and I just can kind of able to just check out the syllables in a phrase and kind of replace them. And, our shows are filled with a lot of like social emotional learning. So they always have a really big message. And so I tie in what my wife kind of creates in that for the script and then kind of, write the lyrics as they need to be for that. Yeah.
I love that.
And you're starting your tour in January, is it? Is that the Peter Plan?
The Peter Plan. I hope when you show this that you can see Cam's reaction. He was like, it was so good. That is the Peter Plan. Yes. So the end of January we debut, and then we are going to take it to one other theater complex within the San Francisco Bay Area. And then after that, then it'll go on tour. Yeah. We have representation for booking our shows nationally. But the way we work is instead of going on tour, like we'll be on the road for the next 6 months, like we do smaller engagements, so like last week we were in Oklahoma and then we're home for 2 weeks. We're going to do Alice in Wonderland locally. And then we do Peter Pan, so like they're all sprinkled out several weeks in between, here, there, a little bit of everywhere, which is also really nice for our lifestyle because, we, some of the times we can take our kids with us. Other times we leave them with the grandparents and we're gone for, 3 or 4 days and we come back and stuff. So it's nice. But yeah, the Peter Plan is that it's up in about 2 months and then it'll be making the rounds for hopefully the next few years. Yeah.
Wow. Holy cow. Do you have any other like big plan just like moving forward? Do you plan on doing more of these theatrical performances for touring, or do you ever want to get involved in making like a pilot show or something for television or film or?
Yeah. Great question. The idea is that we will launch a few more of these book shows. We want to, continue to do recognizable titles. It's great for families because they know it. It's great for performing arts centers because they know they can hire us and sell tickets based off of that recognition. So we have the third one figured out. We haven't announced it yet. We won't until probably right around Peter Pan debuts. We may do a fourth one, but before that, we may actually do a holiday show. We may want to do, but maybe not the holidays, maybe a different type of holiday. We have a few other, kind of cool ideas. We also, with our live shows, we have all these ideas of, real big aspirations, things that might take, 5 more years, 10 more years, really big spectacles, where we sit down with one of our productions for a long time, or we're, in New York doing one, or we're in, here or that, we have a lot of ideas, like I said, over the next decades, what we think the company could grow into. But between now and then, the other thing we really want to do is, have a digital platform. I don't know if my wife and I are interested really in doing, say, a television show or, a streaming show on Netflix, Amazon, or what, but we do want to have digital content that's, filmed that would be, on an educational platform. I've worked with a few companies. I've worked with a few companies. I've worked with other local, companies that have national recognition. I've worked with a company called Class Dojo, which, Adam, have you ever heard of Class Dojo?
Oh, yes.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I was gonna say, I mean, Class Dojo, they got like 9
That's huge. Yeah.
They got like
oh
9
my God.
million
Yeah. They should make a
subscribers.
show out of that too. Kids love those little avatars and stuff and their
Yeah.
little monsters and whatnot. Yeah.
Well,
That could be much bigger than what it is. Yeah.
Well, they're I mean, like they're well,
NDAs.
yeah, I mean, I can't even recall, to be honest. But yes, let's just say I've worked with them recently.
Wow.
Yeah, and there is content. I think they're trying to just they're testing some things right now. And I think I can say that without spilling anything, but there is content that will come out with some stuff. So I've been contracted by them to do some things because they're based in San Francisco. And there is, a community of puppeteers here. Not as many that do film and TV work, and having that skill set from LA, I can jump in and do that. So, but yeah, seeing what they do, I'd share the scripts with my wife. We talk about it, and they're doing a lot of great stuff. And so we were just saying, there's such a platform for this, and our shows are really entertaining, but they really do have such an educational message. We're fortunate enough to kind of live on both sides, that we can have these big public shows for families, and they don't feel like they're seeing a school play type of format. But yet the schools are getting a lot of value because we're infusing all this stuff in there rather than just doing some literature title, and that's the only educational component. We have more. So the fact that we kind of live in both, we want to be able to have something like that. We have no idea what it'll be yet. We played around last year and we had something, and we're going to revamp it a little bit. But in between these big stage shows, we're going to try to get something like that up in the next couple of years, we hope. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's a great idea. You should just do it and put it online anyway. Because, a lot of people ask me too, and I see people.
That's true.
They ask me about, like, oh my gosh, your YouTube channel is so big, Adam. Oh my gosh, I want to do that, make puppet building videos. I'm like, you know what? Like, I'm probably kind of capped out a little bit. Puppet building is so niche, but if you take the puppets that you build and create a show with it, I mean, it could be the next big thing, because that's mass market. Puppet building videos, how to make a puppet, that's not mass market. You're not gonna get a very far of a reach doing that. But again, if you make your puppet and you make a show, I mean, even look at the one YouTube channel. I don't think they do anymore. Glove and Boots.
Yeah,
I mean, that was humongous.
Yeah,
on
they were
YouTube.
huge.
Humongous. And again, and talk about, and they did a great job, the good writing and stuff. But again, if you look at the puppets and the puppetry, it's very simple. It's very achievable. They did a great job with it, but it's not something that's like completely unachievable, and you without a doubt have the skill and the abilities to do it. And I think a lot of people do. And if they want to, the next big thing, that's what it's going to be. It's going to be entertainment, mass market.
Yeah. And like you said, now I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. Like, not eating my own words, but listening to my own advice. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. Just do it. If you want it bad enough, just do it. And
exactly.
And put it out there.
Don't tell me like, well, I don't know how to edit. I don't have a camera. Come on, you got a phone. Do it.
That's the thing. Yeah. I mean, I edited one of our smaller promo videos once on the app on my phone and did a YouTube. Sure. It was like in 30 minutes. I had the whole thing, and no one would know. That's the world we live in now. So you're right. If people really get out of their own way, there's not an excuse anymore for not doing it. Yeah.
Hey, you know what? You just got to be sincere about it as well. People can just tell. They can see right through it.
Yeah. And it's interesting you say that. Yeah, because I realized so many times when I did projects and they didn't work out, it's because of that. I wasn't being genuine, or I was trying to kind of like check all these boxes. It'll succeed if it's like this, even though that's not my taste. I was like, I think it's gonna, and exactly, people see that right through. And the one thing, about writing these stage shows is I just crack myself up when I write them, because I'm a huge nerd, and I'm like, it'd be funny if I have a joke like this, and if I think it's funny, perhaps other people will. And you just gotta like write and produce your own content that you yourself would enjoy. And if you dig it, then people will see. And Adam, I'm gonna say the same thing to you, man. Like, first off, I love your videos. I do. For Peter Pan, I molded all my eyes because I watched your tutorial on eyes, and I got was it Smoothcast 30, Umu 300, or one of the, I literally was like, I just bought everything. I have your big old goggles, dude. I order online.
Are those cool?
And I have like the dust mask. I mean, like secretly, I've kind of become like the Adam Krutinger like groupie. I'm like, I don't tell him, but like I'm kind of geeking out on his videos a little bit,
Like, join the crew.
Yeah. But because you're so genuine to watch, man, like you really are. Like you're very likable on camera, and you're just being yourself and just sharing what you love to do. And that's why you're blowing up big time right now, because that's all it is. And so you're a huge lesson of what people can learn. If they want to put it out there, just do your thing, tell it your way, share what you want to share, put it out there, because people will see that and they'll love it.
I don't know if I'm blowing up.
Well, I
had like 2,000 views on the average video, and I have a feeling half of them is Derek Lux just watching it 1,000 times.
It's so true. It's so true. I'm like, okay, all right, yeah. But yeah, I think a lot of people have shared videos, and you've been able to churn them out so consistently, and coming up with all of these. And I always feel like, because I didn't come from a shop. Some people learned to build puppets in a shop. They worked at this place for 5 years. And so they have like formal or the training or the best understanding of how to do every part of a puppet process. I've got all these gaps, I'm like, I've always wondered, what's the best way to do this part of a puppet? And through trial and error, I'm still not figuring out. And what you're doing is you're filling in all those gaps, man.
I'm trying to do it. So I get a lot of comments from people saying, like, once in a while I get someone saying, well, actually, Adam, that's wrong. It's supposed to be done this way. And I pretty much, in a very nice way, I'm just like, that's another way to do it. There's not one way to do it, especially with puppetry too. Every puppet you build is just so different, with the one to the next. I'm always trying something different. I'm just trying to share with people, this is how I tackled this problem. Really, is this how it was? So
exactly, and that's what I've learned is that some people have their way of doing it, but at the end of the day, there's so many different techniques, and I've gotten criticized recently too about overcomplicating it or doing this and that. But I'm like, well, and as everybody knows, you don't know how to make a puppet until you've finished making it, and then you go, okay, if I were to go back and make another one, I would do 100 things different, and so.
Amen. Yeah, that's the answer right there. A lot of people don't understand the trial and error. Yeah, I literally have I bought a garbage can for the side of my room that's not for garbage. It's just to hold mistakes and prototypes. A head that was the wrong size, a body that was the wrong size, and then sometimes I Frankenstein them together a little bit. But yeah,
exactly. And so people need to calm down and be loving about it. If we're all making puppets, we're all trying to bring joy. We're all trying to do this art form we love. Let's be supportive, and everybody's got their own style. Just support each other. Gosh darn it. A lot of puppeteers, you feel very like you're alone, and it's a solitary. If you're building, it's solitary. If you're performing, yeah, maybe. But if you're in a city where you're all by yourself, you just feel like you're operating by yourself. And I'm so wanting to, break in and embrace more of like the community. And I'm like, nobody knows me. Who can I have? And so I'm so flattered that you like that one time, Adam, as an example, someone's like, how do you make a living? And you're like, oh, someone like Derek Lux or David Stevens or someone else who's created their own thing. That's how that was validating, and it was awesome. Yeah. So
people look at me because I'm not doing that. People think I am. I don't know how much they like. Clearly, they don't listen to the podcast. I say it all the time that I don't make it. I don't make money, and when I say I don't make any money, I make very, very little money. Not near enough that could. I don't even think I could pay a month of mortgage with what I make in a year. There's the costs to doing this. People, I can't tell you how many messages I got. I just got one the other day. Wow, all the materials to buy a puppet are really expensive. Can you just make me one? Like, you think it's gonna be cheaper to have me make it than for you to buy the materials? You think it'd be cheaper than the material cost?
I know.
Like, what is going through that thing on your shoulders?
I know, and
actually, one thing that I almost interjected, but I didn't want to cut you off. But you mentioned about how you're saying like, oh, if you had to pay for people to make your puppets, like it would cost so much money. And my fear is I know somebody in this world is going to interpret that as, oh, wow, I should have Derek make my puppets because it's going to be cheap. It's like, no, that's not like because obviously that's why I built for myself too. Because you know why? Because I don't have to pay myself the time.
Yeah.
It only costs me the material cost. Like, of course, I'm going to do it for myself for free.
That's the thing. Yeah. Like, I remember when we got like our first like grant, someone's like, now are you going to pay yourself? I'm like, no, because we'd have no budget left. I'm like, I'll buy, $200 worth of stuff for maybe the first puppet or two or what. I mean, like, I don't know. But I'm always budgeting a couple $100 for materials. I'm like, do you realize the thousands it would be if I had a shop or another builder of, someone like on our level or other people? I'm like, it's just not achievable. I can't pay myself. I can only just buy the materials. That's it. And
everything I make just goes straight back into it. Because even like selling the patterns on my website and stuff, like I don't really make money. It just helps support the things that we're doing. Like I said, it helps pay for the podcast because I have to pay monthly to be able to upload this and have the bandwidth for it, and even to keep the websites alive. In order to have downloadable links for the free patterns, I have to upgrade my website to a paid service in order to do that. So like it costs me money to give things away for free. And people are like, oh, well, he must be making a ton of money on those patterns. It's like, no. Yeah, because the video with the pattern might have 5,000 views or something or more, does not have 5,000 paid downloads. It maybe has 2 or 3, So
yeah, I know. That's not, exactly. Yeah. I know. I think about that all the time. And that's what you're saying, like with the storage now. I mean, like, in the first few months, I didn't have any overhead for our company. Now I'm like, oh, well, I financed a trailer. It's a big automobile. That's
big
part
deal.
there.
Now you're making more, but you're spending a lot more in order to
insurance and oh god.
Yeah, that's the thing is I'm like, okay, now I'm actually getting some costs, but I'm like, all right, we're still doing good. But yeah, exactly. It's people got to understand, like, just from a business point, you spend more as you earn more and blah 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 blah. Yeah.
No, it's like messing up my taxes because as just a teacher, I used to get a nice little tax return, like ooh, and then last year it's like I got to pay $2,000. What?
I know, right? And you're like, oh,
I have to pay now. It's like, oh my gosh, I didn't make that much. Oh my god,
I know. Oh. Cam, I'm curious, like your TEDx that you did on Puppeteer, how many views does that have on YouTube? Do you know?
I haven't checked it in quite a while.
It depends. How many times did you watch it?
Well, like 1,700, like not that much. I know. I love that I admitted that I'm such a groupie, but dude, I am. Like I literally will watch, and it's so funny because, I'm stitching. I was stitching Peter Pan while I was listening to Swazzle. On your podcast. I mean, how literally it's all incestuous.
That was the goal in this. Because you know what? Because I found myself, I'm sitting here for hours and hours listening to podcasts. And it's like, you know what? Other people who are just starting or maybe people who aren't starting, like, we can't have enough content to fully take up all your time in building. Like, there's just not enough content in the world, but it'd be kind of cool.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's why I'm like, this is pretty rad. I am like, fully immersed in puppetry right now between like all of these facets. Yeah. And Cam, I think that's how I saw your puppetry, like I said, your TEDx.
Yeah.
With like the 3-eyed alien, right? Yeah.
The 4-eyed monster. Yeah. Adam built. Yeah. That was the first time. So I had made the original a couple years before that. And then Adam rebuilt them for me much better than I could have done that. But I guess the video has 1,300 views. Or 13,000 views, which that was like 5 years ago or so. So I'm,
But it's same for me, like I see that and I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to do that someday. Like that looks so cool to do the TEDx, and it's to have that. It's
well, amazing. You know what? And it's funny because I'm sure I imagine there's a TEDx San Francisco, and you should just seek that out because it is for any of the TEDx conferences. And I know because after doing that video, I ended up working for TEDx Buffalo for a couple of years as a volunteer, and it's so. I don't want to say it's easy to get a TEDx talk, but it's easier than you would think. The TED, like the TED proper, that's a hard thing to get into. But for you to get onto a TEDx stage is kind of just setting them a 2-minute pitch video and saying, I'd like to do this, and here's what I'd like to talk about. And if you talk about all the things that we talked about here, it'd be really easy. And it's been a great plug for me. I'm always flattered when someone on the O'Neill page the other day asked for like, what are some good puppet reference videos, and they included my TEDx talk with Mervyn Miller's TEDx talk, and I was like, holy crap. Like different levels, but because it has that TED name, there's a recognition there. But yeah, I would definitely search that out for yourself too.
Definitely, it can help
totally be able
promote
to
your show and stuff too, and just get your name out there. Because even my buddy did a TEDx, and it did real well. It's got over 3 million views, and based on that, he's able to get a lot of bookings for his speakings. He's a magician and a speaker as well, and he's been able to get a lot of booking on it. Wrote a book and is able to help plug it through that and stuff. So yeah, a lot of good help from it.
That's great. Yeah, and like I said, that's where I saw your video, Cam, and then that led me to Adam's website, and then saw Adam, and then all of it. And it's funny. It's like, Cam, we technically met so briefly at the O'Neill, if you remember.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, I definitely do.
Yeah. I'll give you like the booger puppet or something for something like that. Yeah. For your piece, which is great, by the way. It was really great.
Oh, thank you. I have one other question before we wrap up. So I know you spent some time at the O'Neill Theater Center, and you were the lead in an adaptation of Sweeny Todd. What were you able to bring from that experience to the shows that you do now? Because it's certainly a different style, but in some of the ways you're borrowing some of the same things. I look at a picture of you with Sweeny Todd, and then a picture of you with your queen from Alice, and it kind of, you could see things a little bit. So what was that experience like?
Thanks for bringing that up. I was like, oh, I'd love to talk about the O'Neill, because you guys bring it up many times on this podcast, and I'm glad you are, because so many people, like I said, are very film and TV minded and may not be aware of it. And no matter what medium you're going to take your puppetry to, the O'Neill has so much value going to. So yes, I went only 1 year. It was 2016. And it was the year there was an adaptation of Sweeny Todd by Art Gruenberger. I had done a lot of, and it was the year before Alice debuted. So it was so helpful to have that experience before the show kind of went into rehearsals and did all that later. The biggest thing was just, it's funny, as simple as it sounds, breathing. The puppets, the heads were 3D printed. There was a handle. They did not move. There was no mouth moving mechanism or any kind. But, they were bunraku, like life-size bunraku style puppets. It took 3 people to operate, and we all had to breathe together, which was just something very simple. I remember working on the Sweeny Todd rehearsal process, and then also I worked on like 1 or 2 other pieces. I guess they're not slam pieces, but at the end of the week, everyone has their own projects. They can
the participant pieces. Yeah,
that's right. I participated in, I think, one person's participant piece, and there was coaches, and I think it was Darren Wood, was the coach. Yeah, who works at the O'Neill. Came through and was like, "You guys aren't breathing. Let me show you something." And it was the most brilliant thing ever. He took a simple, I think we had just a real simple little puppet for one of the participant pieces, held it, and he just started breathing. And all of a sudden, we started seeing the puppet breathe. And I said, well, what did you do? He's like, I'm not doing anything. I'm breathing. And by me just breathing that little bit, I can't stop. It's going to go through to the puppet. And we saw this tiny little mouse puppet breathe. And for me, it was like, because, we all see the Muppets. We all see, we see so many versions of, or so many different examples of that type of puppetry. But when you see very small, intimate, subtle puppetry that's, maybe grounded in something like, maybe, I hate to say a level deeper, because the Muppets are deep, but it's, maybe when you're doing more of a dramatic story, if you will, with what you're doing with your puppetry, it's got to just drop another layer down. And Sweeny Todd was that. Sweeny Todd, it's a very dark musical, and it, if you've ever seen it or seen it done well, the people need to be actors. They really need to be good actors, and to have that gravitas. So it was good for me. I remember trying to kind of take the method acting stuff bring it into that. I remember the first time we were going through one of these scenes, my scene partner was, Mrs. Lovett, and she was watching me, and it's this whole sequence where Sweeny Todd learns that while he was away, incarcerated, his wife was assaulted and all these horrible things happened. And while he's hearing it, he's boiling up and then has to no and scream and all this stuff. But I remember in the first rehearsal, I just was already getting so affected. The method acting stuff came back to me, and I started crying during that whole thing. I was like, yes, acting training kicked in. Woo, like I can cry. Yeah. But she just started looking at me, and then later she's like, I was kind of like, what are you doing? And then she's like, oh, he's like acting. Oh, okay, cool. I'm like, yeah, because we're trying to do this. But at the same time, I was acting as an actor, but I had to send it through to the puppet, and I had to make sure I wasn't forgetting that. And that was, the struggle of when you have the puppeteer present. They can't steal the performance. It's still got to go to the puppet. So all of those things were just huge epiphanies, because I'm a big ham and I like stealing the spotlight, and sure, I've got all this training or whatnot, but it was like, that doesn't matter if it can't translate to the puppet. It can't just be a silly prop and I'm like the actor on stage. It has to be the puppet first and foremost.
Absolutely. Right. I'm glad you brought that up, because so many people feel like they're not doing their job if the puppet's not moving or doing something. Like, I know we've been on some film shoots where the director, who maybe doesn't know puppetry as much, he's like, just move the arms a little bit. What?
Why are the ears wiggling right now? And it's like, they don't need to.
Right.
Like, it just looks like it's not moving much. It's like, because it's listening to the other character. Like, it's just like, it takes a lot more to be alive than just moving the puppet around, Yeah,
exactly. I always get that same thing. Like, can it do one of those bigger? Yeah.
It's like you brought us in for a reason. We're the puppet. Like, trust us. Not that we're saying we're not going to listen to you. We're definitely going to listen, but just trust us as well as artists. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So now that I do Alice in Wonderland, when I am on stage, I'm always trying to like look less at the audience and do the facial stuff and really zero in and be like, just what little stuff can I just keep trying to push my performance forward in the right way, in the most believable way. And so, yeah, my time at the O'Neill, I got all of that and hundreds of other lessons. Just as another plug, any person listening who's considering going to the O'Neill, you must just do, even if it's just once. Even if it's just once, and you're
like, if you apply and you don't get in, apply again and apply again, apply until you get in. Don't be. A lot of people I've heard of sometimes get discouraged from not getting in the first time, and I know
that happens to everybody.
I know I didn't get in the first time. I don't think I got in the second time either. So you just have to apply and make sure you put a lot of thought into what you're writing. Don't just copy and paste the same thing as last year, because if it didn't get you in last year, it's not going to get you again. And even if it got you in last year, it doesn't mean it's going to get you in again next year as well. So you got to be very thoughtful and mindful in what you're writing and be honest.
Yeah, that's it. Again, what you put into it, what you get out of it.
Got to be sincere.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally.
Well, Derek, as we begin to wrap up a little bit, we'll ask you what we ask everybody as we close. Do you have any good puppeteer stories of sometime when something didn't go right, but now you look back and are able to kind of laugh and enjoy?
Many. I've had, as an actor and performer, I've had my share. I mean, I've on stage, I've literally fallen off the stage into audience. I've broken set piece. I mean, like, as an actor, but I've had a moment where I've gone back and almost cried afterwards, because I literally landed on an audience member's lap and broke something as I fell off the stage, and I thought I was injured. Yeah, it was horrible. So I'm kind of one of those klutzy guys, or at least I was in my 20s. Like, everything that could happen did happen to Derek Lux, because I was like, oh, no, this. Like, it was just, But the best example, because again, I thought about this, Cam. I was like, okay, puppeteers. What's my puppeteer story? And it's funny. Just this last week, we had some complications. Just minor, like a minor glitch during one of the performances. Not a big deal, but it made me just had that feeling inside. So every so often I have those kind of little ones, but the biggest was 5 years ago. I was fortunate enough to be contracted to build a big Shrek dragon for Shrek the Musical, along with Christian Anderson, who's another great puppeteer, would be phenomenal for this podcast. Christian was on Broadway in Avenue Q for many years in its original Broadway production, and He's in LA. He's working on kidding. He's working on a bunch of stuff. He's an old friend, so he's phenomenal. We got contracted to build for one of the first regional productions of Shrek in LA. It was a really big budget, and we built the dragon in a very, very short amount of time. And, you know, we were working those crazy kind of hours. And the story goes like this, is that we wanted to have all the fabric for the Shrek dragon, like on the neck. The head was going to be detachable, and the understructure was there. So we were going to have like the fabric stretched and like snapped around like the base of the head. So we had all these snaps, and my wife was like 6 months pregnant with twins and put on bed rest. And we were working out of my garage at the time. So I was trying to figure out everything, and I just had a handful of snaps, and I gave them to her. And I said, hey, can you help me? Can you sew these like 50 snaps? It's going to take a while. Just if you can just sit and watch TV and sew all these snaps, great. So then I go back downstairs after several hours, and I'm looking at one of the snaps, and Christian goes to me and goes, hey, wait a second. You do realize there's like a male and a female side to snaps, right? And I go, well, wait, what are you talking about? And I'm like, they go to get like those black ones, you know, those bigger ones. And because they both kind of have like a carved out side on both sides, I figure, hey, they can kind of be interchangeable and whatnot, and they'll go together. So come to find out, I had given my wife hours of work I told her wrong. And then I knew I was going to have to go fix it. So I went back upstairs to the bedroom, looked at her, and I was getting maybe 3 hours of sleep every night for several weeks running. And there's all these fumes downstairs in the garage, and she's up there. And I worry I'm exposing her and the babies maybe to toxic fumes, all this stuff. And, you know, and then she's sitting there with these snaps, and I look at her, and because I was so stressed, and it was like a week before we had to deliver it, I was so stressed and I was so fatigued. I looked at her and looked at the snaps, and I broke down and started bawling.
Wow, you really had puppeteers then. Wow, this was our first.
It was one of those where I was like, babe, I don't know if I can do this anymore. It's just all of it. I went into this whole tirade. She was like, oh, good grief, here we go. You can do it. You can do it. It's like, I don't want to build this dragon anymore. Like, just.
Oh, I don't even think I could tell my wife that. I just like, great job, honey. Come back and undo it. Even though, you know, my own fault. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and wow. I mean, the good and bad side of all that method acting stuff is it makes everything's right at the surface and accessible. So you kind of can be a very passionate person, let's just say emotionally. So
yeah.
Oh man, I was just a hot mess. And so that was my largest puppet bawling tears, story ever.
Wow. Yeah, man. That's crazy. Yeah, those deadlines can be tough too. Yeah. But so how can people find out about your shows and what you're working on? What's the best way to follow you?
Sure. So we're pretty active on social media. We do, of course, have a website. So it's, www.dluxpuppets.com. Just DLUX, not the deluxe, but the DLux Puppets. We're on Instagram. We're on Twitter. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube. We're getting Pinterest up there. Twitter, it's one of those things. We have Twitter. We kind of have our Instagram feed. Go to Twitter. I can't seem to break through Twitter and trying to, but we're active on it. But yeah, we post a lot of things, mostly on Facebook and Instagram, because we post a lot of behind the scenes from our building and our touring and promo videos. And by the time this debuts, this episode, we'll have launched a promo video and first look at the puppets and things like that. So in the coming weeks, we're going to be very active. So everyone, please like and subscribe and follow and all that.
Absolutely. Yeah. We'll definitely make sure we plug it all.
Yeah. Well, Derek Lux, thank you so much for joining us on Puppeteers. It was great to catch up with you, and loved hearing your stories. So thank you again. This
was a long one. I'm gonna have to go get an In-N-Out burger before.
Well, as long as that's part of the Peter plan, I think we'll be okay. But no, honestly, guys, I am a huge fan of the podcast, so it has been my pleasure to be on. And yeah, exactly. To all the listeners, sorry if I talked a long time, but I'm kind of a talker, so that's what I do.
That's what we're here for. So.
That's right. Thanks, bud. See you soon.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, guys.